It had been raining all morning in Savannah, Georgia. Not a wild, angry storm, but a slow, steady, soaking kind of rain. The kind that makes everything quiet. The kind that pulls memories out of old wood and buried pain out of old hearts. She sat by the window in her white dress, 70 years old today. Her house was filled with flowers, laughter, and expensive champagne. Her other sons, clean-shaven, light-skinned, and corporate polished, laughed loudly as they circled around her, each handing her designer boxes with gold ribbons and brand names. She smiled, but her eyes kept drifting toward the door. Not with hope, not even with guilt, just with the tension of someone expecting a shadow she thought she'd erased. Then the door opened, and the laughter died. He stepped in, dressed in a deep charcoal black suit. No tie, no watch, no jewelry, just quiet dignity, and in his hand, a small gift wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with string. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. He was her firstborn. He was her darkest. He was her shame. Angry. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp as broken glass. He looked at her, not with bitterness, not even sadness, just with the kind of calm that comes after years of building peace without permission. Calm. "It's your birthday," he said, gentle. "I came to give you something." He walked over, placed the box gently on the coffee table beside her, then took a step back. Her other sons, fair-skinned and confident, exchanged smirks behind him, muttering, mocking, "Still shopping at the dollar store?" She looked down at the box. No gold, no label, no pride, and that alone made her angry. She picked it up, unwrapped it roughly. Inside was a single key, glossy black, with a small golden emblem on the handle. Nothing more. Before anyone could speak, a soft rumble echoed outside. Someone looked through the window. A $2 million matte black Rolls Royce Phantom, wrapped in orchids and a single white ribbon, sat in the driveway, sleek and glowing like royalty had arrived. There were no cameras, no speech, just the car, and a son who had once walked away with nothing but broken pride. The room froze. Softly. "Happy birthday, Mom." She stared at the key, her fingers tightened. She stood, walked to him, and without warning, she threw the box at his chest. It hit hard, then fell to the floor. Snapping. "I don't want your pity," angry. "You think you can show off and buy your way into this family? You're not one of us. You never were, you never will be." Not a word was spoken. Not a single brother stood up for him. He looked at her, then turned, and walked back into the rain. Behind him, the key lay on the carpet untouched, forgotten. He didn't even pick it up. He had brought a Rolls Royce, but all she saw was the boy she once told. Condemning. "Your skin will never be enough." Engaging. Quick question for you, the one watching this right now. Thoughtful. Do you love your parents? Reflective? Are you still living with them, or have you drifted away like so many do over time? Curious. And also, where are you watching this from right now? Are you on a couch, in bed, on a lunch break, or just scrolling late at night? Drop it in the comments. Sincere. I'm genuinely curious how this story found you today. He was 5 when he first realized he didn't belong. His name was Elijah. And from the very beginning, the world reminded him that he was different. His skin was darker than his brother's, his hair tighter, his smile quieter. When he laughed too loudly, his mother told him to hush. When he cried, she told him to stop acting weak. But it wasn't just her words, it was her eyes. Eyes that softened for her other children and sharpened for him. They all lived under the same roof, a modest home on the edge of town. But Elijah always felt like a guest, like he had to earn a place in a family he was born into. His father, sad, gone before he could spell the word. And in his absence, Elijah carried a label the town whispered behind hands and hollow smiles. Whispering, the dark one, the mistake, the burden. His mother never corrected them. She didn't have to. Her silence was enough. She poured her time into her 2 younger sons, Jordan and Caleb. They were light-skinned, charming, easy to show off. She brought them to church in pressed suits, took photos with them at school events, told strangers how proud she was. Sad. But Elijah? Elijah was the one she asked to stay home. Dismissive. "You wouldn't understand, baby," she'd say, brushing past him. "Not today." She said that every time. He used to wait by the window with a hand-drawn sign that read, childlike, "Good luck, Caleb." His brother never looked up. One year on her birthday, Elijah used his saved-up lunch money to buy her a pair of earrings from the corner thrift shop. He wrapped them in tissue paper and left them on her nightstand with a note that said, "Sincere. For the only queen I've ever known." She never wore them. She never said thank you. 2 weeks later, he found them in the trash behind the house. That night, he sat in the dark and stared at his hands, determined. "I will become someone," he whispered, "even if you never see it." By the time he was 12, he had learned how to cook, clean, fix things around the house, not because he was asked, but because it gave him something to control in a world where he had no place. By 15, he was working 2 after-school jobs. Janitor in the morning, delivery boy in the evening. He made sure to never ask her for anything, and she made sure to never offer. Every time he earned a little money, he hid it under his mattress. Not for clothes, not for video games, but for something he couldn't name yet. A future, an escape. Jordan and Caleb got new shoes, driving lessons, and praise. Elijah got silence. The day he graduated high school, he stood alone at the edge of the crowd, watching other mothers hug their sons tightly. His mother came late, left early, didn't take a single picture. That night, she told him, coldly, "You can't live here forever, Elijah." Short pause. "The others are going to college. You, resigned. Well, you'll figure something out, I'm sure." She didn't say goodbye when he left. She didn't ask where he was going. She just moved his things into the garage. He slept in a friend's car for 2 months, then in the back of a barber shop where he worked part-time, sweeping floors and folding towels. The owner, Mr. Darius, was the first man to ever look at Elijah and say, thoughtful, "You've got fire in your eyes." Emphatically, "Don't let this town kill it." He taught Elijah how to save, how to speak with confidence, how to dream without apologizing. By 20, Elijah owned part of the shop. By 22, he had started his first small company, a mobile detailing service. He named it Royal Rinse because he believed even scratched-up cars deserved to be treated like kings. People laughed. At first, then they saw the reviews. The attention to detail, the way he treated every customer like family, the way he spoke, calm, collected, full of something that couldn't be bought. And slowly, Elijah began to rise. When he bought his first luxury SUV, he drove it back to his old neighborhood and parked it near his mother's driveway. Not close, just near enough. She looked once through the curtains, then closed them. No call, no message, not even a glance the next time she saw him at the grocery store. The cashier said, curious, "Isn't she your mother?" He smiled politely, resigned. "She was," he said, at one point. But he wasn't bitter. He couldn't afford bitterness. He was too busy building. 28, he owned 3 businesses. By 32, he was mentoring young men who came from less than he did. By 35, he had started his own foundation, Second Sons, focused on helping young Black men find purpose, identity, and worth in a world that constantly tried to erase them. He never boasted. He never posted his life online. But he never forgot. One summer, while attending a business conference in Miami, he met Alina, a quiet, fierce woman with eyes like peace and a mind sharper than any boardroom executive he'd met. They married the next year. They had 2 daughters, Zoe and Lila, twins, curious, brilliant, full of questions. And one of those questions changed everything. Innocently, "Daddy," Zoe asked one night, "why don't we ever go visit Grandma?" Elijah had no answer, so he lied. Hesitantly, "She lives," thoughtful. "She lives far away," he said, eagerly. "Can we send her something?" Lila asked, clutching a picture she drew. Elijah nodded slowly. Sigh. "Maybe soon." He looked at the drawing. A big house, a tall man, 2 little girls holding his hand, and an old woman in a window. He didn't realize how much of the past still lived in his bones until that moment. The night before his mother's 70th birthday, Elijah stood in his driveway, staring at the matte black Rolls Royce Phantom he had custom built over the last year. He hadn't planned to go, but something pulled him. Not revenge, not validation, just thoughtful. Closure. He wrapped the key in plain paper, not to hide the value, but to hide the noise. He wasn't trying to impress, he was trying to show love the way he always had. Quietly, carefully, and without conditions. Even to someone who had never once said, "I'm proud of you." The day of her birthday arrived like any other summer day. Hot, heavy with humidity, and filled with noise. Balloons framed the porch, golden streamers lined the entryway, and a banner with glittering letters read, "Happy 70th, our Queen." Catering trucks lined the street. Her other sons had spared no expense. Waiters in white shirts served shrimp cocktails, wine and mini cheesecakes topped with edible gold leaf. A violinist played softly near the garden while neighbors, church friends, and distant relatives mingled around tables adorned in ivory silk. The woman at the center of it all, Diane, looked every bit the matriarch she believed herself to be. She wore a pale cream suit, pearls at her neck, and just enough makeup to smooth the years without erasing them. To everyone around her, she was elegance, grace, and wisdom. But beneath it all lived a memory she had chosen to forget, until he arrived. Elijah didn't walk through the front door, he stepped through the back, quietly, respectfully, the way forgotten sons often do. He had parked the Phantom 2 houses away. No crowd, no music, no fanfare. He carried only one thing, a small brown box with a black ribbon. Inside was the key, and a handwritten note that read, "For the one who gave me life, even when she couldn't give me love." He made it 5 steps into the room before the air changed. Suddenly, conversation stopped. Champagne froze mid-sip. Heads turned. The room didn't go silent because they didn't know who he was. It went silent because they did. Elijah, in a pressed black suit, with posture straight and eyes calm, looked like he belonged at the head of every table. But in that house, he still felt 12, still felt invisible. Diane turned slowly in her chair, a half-eaten slice of cake on her plate, a camera flash catching the tightness in her jaw. Her smile disappeared. Coldly, "Elijah," she said, annoyed, "why are you here?" He stood still. "I came to celebrate your birthday." "You weren't invited." "I didn't come to eat." Her eyes dropped to the box in his hand. "What is that?" "A gift," he said softly. "Something from me." "From your son." She narrowed her eyes. "You mean from your money?" He didn't react. He placed the box gently on the table beside her. Her other sons, Jordan and Caleb, moved forward. "Elijah, man, we don't want any drama," Jordan said, trying to sound polite but firm. "Today's about our mother. You showing up like this? Like what? Like I exist?" Caleb smirked. "You could have sent a card, bro. No need to show up trying to prove something." Elijah didn't look at them. His gaze stayed on her. "I'm not here to prove anything. I'm here because, despite everything, I still love her." She said nothing. He stepped back. "If you don't want it, I understand." She reached for the box, slowly, like it might sting her. She unwrapped it with disdain, letting the paper fall to the floor. Inside, the key gleamed like a mirror to the past. There was a pause. Everyone waited. Then her voice sliced through the air. "What is this supposed to be?" Explaining. "A car. It's outside for you." "A car," she repeated, proudly. "Yes, a Rolls Royce." Some people gasped. Some smiled awkwardly. Most just stared. Diane stood. And then, without hesitation, she threw the box at him. It hit his chest, dropped to the floor. He didn't move. "I don't want your filthy gifts. You think this makes you better than us? Buying some fancy car, showing up like some celebrity, you're still that same dark-skinned mistake I should have left in the hospital." Someone whispered, "Jesus." Elijah stood in silence, his jaw clenched not in anger, but to hold back the years that suddenly surged up like floodwater behind his eyes. He looked at her one last time, then turned and walked out, Zoe and Lila were in the back seat of the Phantom, watching from a distance. They hadn't been allowed inside. They didn't even know what was happening, only that their father walked back to the car with no box, no smile, and no goodbye. He opened the door, sat down, hopeful. "Did she like it?" Zoe asked. He didn't answer. "Say, small, daddy?" Lila tried. Still nothing. Just the sound of the engine starting. The Phantom glided away from the house as laughter picked back up behind them, shallow and nervous. Zoe looked out the window and said, "She didn't hug you." "No," Elijah said quietly. "She didn't smile either." "No? Why?" she whispered. He didn't know how to tell her that some people only love what reflects them, and he had never been her mirror. That night, Elijah sat alone on the balcony of their home. The girls had gone to sleep. Alina came outside, gently placing a blanket over his shoulders. "You were brave," she said. He didn't respond. "She doesn't deserve to be in your head anymore." He looked up at the stars. "She's not," he said. "But it hurts. She hurt you, not just as a child. She hurt you again today." "I know." "Then why did you go?" He looked at her, his voice calm. "So my daughters never grow up wondering why I didn't try." The next morning, Zoe and Lila sat in the playroom. Lila whispered, "She didn't even say happy birthday to him." Zoe held up her drawing. "Maybe she doesn't know how to say sorry." Lila frowned. "That's not fair." Zoe looked at her sister. "Then let's find out why." They didn't ask their father. They didn't tell their mother. They just started looking. They found a box in the closet labeled Elijah, old papers. Inside were photos, old report cards, a newspaper clipping of his first business opening, and a rejection letter from a scholarship committee dated back to 2006. One photo stood out. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8, sitting on the front porch of a house, alone, holding a handmade card. On the back, in faded pencil, it read, "Happy birthday, Ma. I hope one day you'll be proud of me." The girls didn't understand everything, but they understood this. Their father had spent a lifetime trying to be seen, and the one person who should have looked first never did. A week later, they asked their dad, "Can we go visit Grandma?" He looked surprised. "Why?" "Because we want to ask her something," Zoe said. "What would you ask?" Lila looked up. "Why she threw away someone the whole world respects." He didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. "If you really want to go, I'll take you." The ride to the village was quiet. Zoe and Lila sat in the back seat of the SUV, their eyes fixed on the blur of trees and broken fences outside. Elijah hadn't spoken much. His hands stayed firm on the steering wheel, but his eyes looked far beyond the road, as if he wasn't driving to a place, but through a memory. They pulled up to a small white house at the edge of a dusty path. No golden balloons, no garden parties, just silence and a worn wooden porch with chipped paint. Thoughtful. "This is where she grew up," Elijah said softly, putting the car in park. The girls looked at him, tentatively. "Will you come in?" He shook his head gently, resolutely. "No, this is something you have to do yourselves." They exchanged a nervous glance. Zoe took a deep breath. Lila held her hand. Then they stepped out. The door creaked as it opened. Diane stood inside, her face unreadable. She wasn't wearing pearls or silk this time, just a plain gray sweater and house slippers. Her hair was tied back. Her posture wasn't proud. It was tired. She looked down at the girls. Coldly. "You're his daughters," she said, as if stating something unpleasant. Zoe nodded. Simply, "We are." Lila added gently, "And you're our grandma." Short pause. There was a pause. Gruffly, "I didn't ask you to come," Diane muttered, turning away. Steadily, "We didn't come because you asked," Zoe replied. "We came because we have questions." Diane walked slowly into the living room. The girls followed, stepping carefully like visitors in a museum that might collapse if they touched anything. Steadily. "Why did you throw Daddy's gift away?" Lila asked, her voice small but steady. Diane sat down in an old armchair. Dismissively, "You're just kids," she said. You don't understand what it means to be a mother. Calmly. Maybe, Zoe said. But we know how it feels to be daughters. That line made Diane pause. She looked at them for the first time. Not past them, not around them, but at them. Resigned. What do you want to know? She asked quietly. Zoe didn't hesitate, directly. Why don't you love him? The room held its breath. Diane stared at her hands, whispering, sadly, because he reminded me of everything I lost. She stood slowly and walked to a cabinet tucked in the corner. From the back of the drawer, she pulled out an old photograph, yellowed at the edges but still intact. She handed it to the girls. It showed a young woman, her, standing beside a dark-skinned man with kind eyes and a confident smile. Softly, "This was your grandfather," she said. His name was Malcolm. Surprised. Daddy's dad? Lila asked. Diane nodded, sighs. Melancholy. He was the only man I ever loved. Zoe looked at her grandmother, confused. Curlius. Then what happened? Bitterly. I was supposed to marry someone else, Diane said, a man my family chose. Light-skinned, wealthy, from a respected family. Thoughtful. But you chose Malcolm, Zoe said, regretful. I did, she replied, and I paid for it. She sat down again, sadly. When I told my father I was pregnant with Malcolm's child, he said I was dead to him, says. My mother cried for days. My church stopped calling. My friends disappeared. They said I ruined everything. So, you took it out on Daddy? Emphatically. No, Diane said. At first, I wanted to run away. I wanted to raise Elijah far from the noise. But Malcolm, he got sick. Real sick. She looked down. Somberly, he died before Elijah turned 2. Silence stretched again, voice trembling. And when he died, she continued, I was left with nothing but a baby the world saw as a stain on my name, says. I tried to love him. I swear I did. But every time I looked at him, I saw a future that had been stolen from me. Tears welled in her eyes, though she fought them, wearily. I remarried, she said, to a man who didn't want Elijah. He made it clear. He wasn't his child, and he never would be. Surprised. Jordan and Caleb's dad? Zoe asked. Diane nodded. Guilty. He told me to keep Elijah quiet. Keep him small. Sadly. I thought I was protecting him, but I was just punishing him. She paused, firmly, and I knew what I was doing. Lila stepped closer, gently. Do you know he still loves you? Diane closed her eyes, pained. That's what hurts most. Sincerely, he gave you the most expensive gift of his life, Zoe said. Not because he wanted to show off, but because he wanted you to know he forgave you. Diane's voice cracked, voice breaking. I didn't want forgiveness, she said. I wanted to forget, says. But he kept rising. Every time I thought he'd disappear, he came back stronger, smarter, kinder. I hated it because it reminded me how much I threw away. Zoe placed the photo gently on the table. Hopeful. It's not too late, she whispered. Diane shook her head, resigned. It's too late for me, but maybe, softly, maybe not for you. She stood slowly and walked to the hallway. From a drawer, she pulled out a sealed envelope, hesitantly. Give this to him, she said, if he'll read it. The girls took it. They didn't hug her, but they didn't hate her either. They just left quietly, like shadows, closing the door on a long-forgotten room. Back in the car, Elijah waited, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes distant. Zoe climbed in beside him. Lila handed him the envelope, solemnly. She told us the truth, Zoe said. He looked at the letter but didn't open it, carefully. She said she was sorry, Lila added, in her way. He stared at it for a long time, then placed it gently in the glove compartment, relieved. I'm glad you girls went, he said softly. Zoe rested her head against his shoulder. Can we go home now? Yes, Elijah said, shifting into gear. Let's go home. He remembers the sound of his father's laughter, that deep, rolling sound that filled the room like music, like protection, like home. Malcolm used to lift him high into the air and say, You're gonna shake this world, little man, no matter what they say. Elijah didn't know what that meant at the time. He only knew that when his father was around, the world felt warmer, kinder. He didn't feel different. He felt chosen. They lived in a small, one-bedroom apartment on the west side of town, surrounded by music, plastic toys, and the smell of old books. Malcolm worked as a school teacher. He loved jazz. He hummed while cooking eggs. He read Elijah bedtime stories from a thick, leather-bound book filled with African folk tales. Elijah's favorite was the story of the lion who wore scars like medals, not because he won every fight, but because he never ran from them. "You're that lion," Malcolm used to whisper into his ear. Elijah believed him. He used to draw lions on everything: napkins, homework sheets, the bathroom mirror with his finger after showers. "Lion heart," he would say to himself in the mirror. That was the name Malcolm gave him. Then, the coughing started. It wasn't bad at first, just a little clearing of the throat, then a wheeze, then full nights where Malcolm couldn't sleep. The doctor said it was late stage. 3 months later, Elijah watched his father take his last breath in a hospital room that smelled like bleach and fear. He didn't cry at first, not until he reached home and saw the lion drawing on the fridge with his father's handwriting above it. "My son, the brave." After that, everything changed. His mother, Diane, changed. Where once there had been warmth in her voice, now there was steel. Where once she played music and danced in the kitchen with Malcolm, now she sat in silence, staring at nothing for hours. The woman who once sang lullabies now shouted instructions. She said, "We can't afford to dream, Elijah. That's over." She started dressing him differently. Pressed shirts, tucked in tight. She cut his hair short, said he needed to look cleaner. She stopped taking him to the park, stopped letting him paint, stopped talking about his father. When Elijah asked about him, she snapped, "He left me with nothing." He didn't understand. Malcolm had been love, warmth, hope. But to Diane, he had become a ghost, tied to a life that collapsed. A year later, Diane married again. His name was Randall. Elijah called him Sir, because that's what he told him to say. Randall never hit him. He didn't have to. His words cut deeper. "Too dark to pass," he once whispered to Diane in the hallway. "Too soft to be a man." Elijah heard it. He always did. Diane said nothing. In time, she had 2 more sons, Jordan and Caleb. They looked like her, fair skin, straight hair, smiles that got praise instead of lectures. When Elijah asked why they got new toys and he didn't, Diane said, sternly, "Because they earn what they get." When he brought home a drawing of a lion with his name on it, she tore it in half, dismissive. "Stop living in stories. That won't feed you." He stopped drawing after that. He stopped asking for hugs. He stopped speaking at dinner unless spoken to. One winter evening, Elijah got into a fight at school, defending a classmate who had been called a racial slur. The principal called home. Diane didn't yell. She didn't even raise her voice. She simply said, exasperated, "Why do you always bring trouble into this house?" He tried to explain. She didn't listen. That night, he slept in the garage. At 14, Elijah got his first job washing dishes at a diner. He never asked Diane for money again. He came home late every night, hands cracked from soap, shoes wet from the walk. When he told Diane he made enough to buy his own school supplies, she didn't say thank you. She said, coldly, "Good, that's how the world works." He nodded, quietly, but deep down a fire was starting. At 16, Elijah found the lion drawing again, stuffed inside an old folder in a closet Diane never opened. He sat on the floor and stared at it for an hour. That night, he wrote a letter to himself, determined. "You are not forgotten. You are not weak. You are not what they say. You are a lion, and lions don't ask for crowns. They take the wilderness and make it a kingdom." He folded it, taped it inside his shoe. He read it every day. When he graduated high school, Diane didn't clap. She didn't attend the ceremony. She told the neighbors she was busy. But Elijah stood on that stage anyway, in a suit borrowed from a friend, with scuffed shoes and a quiet smile, and said to himself, thoughtful, "I made it this far without love. Imagine what I can do with belief." He left home that night with nothing but a backpack, the lion drawing, and the letter in his shoe. He never returned, but he never forgot. Years later, as he held his own daughters for the first time in the hospital, Elijah cried, not because he was overwhelmed, but because he felt something new, the clean slate of fatherhood. He whispered to them, whispering, "You will never doubt my love." And when they drew him pictures of lions, he hung them on every wall. Because some legacies aren't inherited, they are rebuilt, piece by men who refuse to become the pain that shaped them. She rejected him in front of everyone, but he raised daughters who refused to bow. It had been 2 weeks since the birthday, 2 weeks since the key had been thrown, 2 weeks since the letter from Diane sat in Elijah's glove box, unread. Life resumed. Elijah returned to work, quiet, efficient. The businesses still ran, clients still smiled, awards still came. But inside, something had dimmed. He didn't speak about it, didn't complain, didn't explain. But Alina saw it in his silence. Zoe and Lila felt it in his hands when he held theirs longer than usual before bed. And then, on a Sunday morning while cleaning out the garage, Zoe found a folded drawing tucked inside a shoebox labeled 1999. A lion, cracked, torn at the edge, faded with age. She stared at it, then showed it to her sister. He's been carrying this his whole life. Lila stared at the drawing, her voice small. Maybe it's time we carry it for him. That night, while Elijah sat in his office reviewing paperwork, the girls knocked softly. He looked up. Determined, we want to talk. He nodded. They entered and sat across from him holding the lion drawing. Solemnly, we know what this is. Elijah took a breath, trying to smile. Dismissively, it's just an old picture. Firmly, no, it's you. It's who you had to be when no one else believed in you. Elijah looked at them, stunned by their clarity. Zoe continued, decisively, and we've decided, short pause, we're going back. He blinked. Surprised. Back where? Determined. To her house, to tell her the rest. What concerned? I don't think that's a good idea. I appreciate you girls caring, but it's not your burden to carry. Zoe stood up, emphatically, but it's our story too. He stared at his daughters, two small mirrors of the love he never received, and said nothing. The next morning, the girls left with Alina. She didn't ask questions, she just drove. They arrived at Diane's house just as the sun broke over the trees, casting long golden lines through the front yard. Diane opened the door with a sigh, surprised to see them again, annoyed. I thought we were done. Zoe stepped forward, firmly. We're not. Diane folded her arms, exasperated. I already told you everything I could. Calmly, we didn't come for more of your story. Assertively, we came to tell you ours. Diane narrowed her eyes but let them in. Inside, the girls pulled out the lion drawing and placed it on the table. Reverently, this is our father. When the world tried to erase him, he kept this. Diane looked at it silent. Zoe pointed at the cracks and tape lines. Accusingly, and even after you threw him out, he still came back to give you the most expensive gift of his life. Quietly, he's always been soft. Firmly, no, he's been strong. It's just that your definition of strength was wrong. Diane looked away. Do you know what it's like to grow up watching someone win without ever needing to get revenge? Zoe asked. You rejected him, you called him a mistake, and still, he rose. Lila leaned forward. And do you know what that taught us? Diane didn't answer. That love is a choice, that dignity is silent, and that lions don't roar to prove they're lions. They just walk forward. Zoe placed the lion drawing back in Diane's lap. He wanted your love. You couldn't give it. That's your story. But now we've seen who he really is, Lila said, and we came here to say, your story ends here. Diane blinked. We love our father. Fully, proudly, loudly. He is everything you taught him not to be, Zoe added, and the world is better because of it. Silence. Then footsteps. Elijah had arrived. He didn't plan to come, but something inside told him to. When he stepped through the door, Diane looked up slowly. No birthday banners this time, just two daughters standing beside a man who had once stood alone. Elijah nodded at them. I told you not to come here, he said gently. Zoe turned to him. We know, Lila smiled, but we thought you deserved to see what a lion really looks like from the outside. He looked at them. Tears threatened, but he held them back. Diane looked at her son, older, taller, greater than she remembered. I wrote you a letter, she said. I know. Sincerely, I meant every word in it. I believe you. She stood. Would you like to hear it? He paused, then nodded. She walked to her bedroom and returned with the envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it and began to read. Elijah, remorsefully, you were born into a storm I didn't know how to survive. You reminded me of a man I couldn't live without, and a life I never got to keep. That wasn't your fault, but I treated you like it was. You gave me chances I didn't deserve. You came back when I gave you nothing. You forgave me when I forgot how to even say your name with kindness. I will never get those years back. I will never earn your love. But if you ever find it in your heart to let me say the words out loud, I'd like to try. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. Love, Ma. She lowered the letter. The house was still. Elijah stepped forward, slowly, one step at a time. He didn't speak, but he reached into his coat and pulled out something folded. A drawing. The same lion. Reprinted. Restored. And this time, signed not with his name alone, but 3. Elijah, Zoe, Lila. He handed it to her. She looked down. Her breath caught. This time it wasn't a gift, it was a legacy. And this time, she didn't throw it away. Elijah didn't speak much during the drive home. Zoe and Lila sat in the back, humming quietly, their faces calm. Not because everything was fixed, but because they had seen something rare. The beginning of a bridge between silence and truth. Alina met them at the door. How did it go? She asked softly. Elijah kissed her forehead. It didn't go how I expected, he said. Better or worse? He looked out at his daughters as they raced toward the garden, laughing in the late sunlight. Better, he said. 2 months later, Elijah launched a new project, Lionheart Academy, a center not just for education, but for rebuilding identity. It wasn't about scholarships or job training alone. It was about boys like him, boys who had been silenced, overlooked, told they were too dark, too poor, too soft to lead. Inside the academy's front hall was a framed quote carved into stone. We are not what they say. We are lions, and we build kingdoms where we were told to crawl. Next to it hung a framed picture, a lion. Drawn in pencil, torn edges, tape lines, faded color, restored with love. Beneath it, donated by Elijah and daughters, Diane never asked for credit. She didn't show up to the opening gala, didn't write a public letter, didn't stand beside him in photographs. But once a week, she came quietly. She'd walk the halls when no one was looking. She'd watch young boys reading books with their heads held high. And sometimes she'd stop at the wall with the lion. One day, she left a single note under the frame. Thank you for becoming the man I tried to erase. Elijah never replied, but he never threw the note away. Zoe and Lila grew up knowing exactly what legacy meant. Not money, not titles, not fame, but dignity, quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. They told their father's story to their classmates, wrote essays about it, created a short film that went viral on social media titled The Gift She Couldn't See. In it, they showed the Rolls Royce. They showed the birthday. They showed their father walking away, not out of weakness, but because lions don't fight for cages, they walk free. Years later, when Elijah stood on a stage accepting a National Humanitarian Award, the camera zoomed in on his face as he said, My mother didn't raise me, but her rejection raised something in me. And now I raise others, not to prove anything, but to remind them, you are more than the people who couldn't love you. You are more than the limits placed on your thoughtful. You are more than the limits placed on your skin, your silence, or your story. Emphatic, you are enough. You've always been enough. And when the world doesn't open a door, build one with your own hands. That's what I did. Sincere. And I pray, you do it too. The crowd rose to their feet, not because he was famous, but because he had turned pain into a path and left behind footprints for others to follow. Direct. Oh, the person watching this, thoughtful. Have you ever been rejected by someone who was supposed to love you? Short pause. Have you ever outgrown the box others tried to force you into? Pensive. Have you ever succeeded silently, just so the world wouldn't hear you cry? Then you understand Elijah. But more importantly, significant. You might be Elijah. So here's what I want to know. Curious. Where are you watching this from? Are you sitting on your bed? Riding a train? Taking a break at work? And more than that, how did you rise through rejection? Inviting. Tell me in the comments below. Let this story not just be heard, but shared. Empathetic, because someone out there is still carrying a lion drawing in their heart, waiting to believe they were always enough.